Ethan had never been good with change, or goodbyes, or the heavy silence that followed hard conversations. But there he was, sitting by the window of an old bus, watching the Mexican coastline unfold between dry hills and scattered palm trees. The warm wind slipped through the cracks, carrying dust and sea salt. It didn't feel like a vacation. At 17, Ethan carried more than just a backpack. He lived with ADHD, which made his mind feel like a detuned radio, full of static, jumping from station to station. Music had always been his escape, the only thing that calmed the noise, but this time, not even music helped. His mom had sent him to spend the summer with his father, a man he barely remembered, someone who had left years ago to rebuild a life in a small fishing town somewhere on the Mexican coast. She said it would be good for both of them. Ethan thought it was punishment. When the bus stopped, he stepped into blinding sunlight and the unfamiliar rhythm of a new place. A man waved at him with a half-smile, older than in the photos, wearing a faded shirt and squinting in the light. Ethan nodded, keeping his headphones around his neck and his words to himself. His father's house was small and worn by the sun, with brick walls, mismatched furniture, and a hammock stretched in the living room. Instruments hung on the walls. Old pictures sat in dusty frames. It felt alive, but not like home. Ethan lay on the bed in the spare room and stared at the ceiling, too tired to move, too restless to sleep. The silence between him and his father was thick, built from years of absence and things never said. Later that night, he woke to a sound drifting in through the window. A soft melody. Someone was playing guitar outside. A girl's voice, gentle, steady, full of emotion. She sang in Portuguese with a slight accent, like someone speaking a language she had learned with love. Ethan got up, drawn to the sound, and looked out. There, sitting on the sidewalk across the street, under the soft, yellow glow of a street lamp, was a girl. Long brown hair in a messy bun, a simple dress, bare feet. Her eyes were closed as she sang, her fingers moving slowly over the strings. He watched from the shadows, unnoticed. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story. But for the first time in days, the noise in his head began to quiet. And somehow, deep down, Ethan knew this summer was going to change everything. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, though he hadn't planned to. The heat was already creeping through the window, and the ceiling fan moved lazily above him, as if just as tired of everything as he was. The house was quiet. His father had already left. A note on the kitchen table said he'd be back late, and the house key was hanging by the door. It felt like a message written between strangers. Ethan stepped outside, headphones still hanging loosely around his neck. He walked through the dusty streets of the small town, trying to take everything in. The colorful houses, the dogs napping on porches, the distant hum of an old radio playing boleros. Everyone seemed to know everyone. He felt like a misplaced piece in a slow-moving puzzle. Without meaning to, he ended up back on the same street from the night before, and there she was again, sitting on the same step. The guitar in her lap, her fingers gently strumming, not quite playing a song, just letting the notes fall softly. Her long brown hair was down this time, and the breeze moved it gently across her face. She wore a white dress with tiny flowers. She looked peaceful. As if the world didn't weigh her down the way it did him, Ethan didn't walk over. He stayed across the street, pretending to look at something else, but his eyes kept returning to her. Later that day, he asked the old man at the fruit stand about her. Her name was Sofia, 17, born and raised in the town, daughter of fishermen, played guitar at church sometimes, and apparently wanted to leave one day and study music in the city, though most people thought it was just a dream. That night, Ethan lay in bed thinking of her again, the way her fingers moved on the strings, the calm in her eyes, The way her voice carried something that settled the storm inside him, even for just a moment. He didn't know what it meant. He just knew he wanted to hear her sing again. The third day began with a grey sky and the smell of rain in the air. Ethan had always liked cloudy days, maybe because the world seemed to slow down, just enough for his thoughts to feel less chaotic. He wandered through the narrow streets until the first drops began to fall. The town emptied quickly as people rushed to close windows and gather their laundry. Ethan ducked under the awning of a small closed shop, hands in his pockets, heart strangely calm. Then, once again, he heard it. A familiar sound, soft and steady. Guitar chords, quiet but certain. He turned. Just across the narrow street, under the canopy of a shuttered cafe, sat Sofia. Her guitar in her lap, her fingers moving gently. She hadn't seen him yet. She was focused, but not serious, like the music belonged to her, but also to the air. Ethan hesitated. Then, for the first time, he crossed the street. She looked up, surprised, but not alarmed. Her gaze met his, calm and curious. Without a word, she made a small gesture with her hand, inviting him to sit beside her. The rain fell softly around them, a rhythmic hush. They sat in silence at first. Then slowly, Sofia began to speak. She said she liked the rain, said it made the world quieter, said it reminded her of music that hadn't been written yet. Ethan nodded, his voice low as he admitted that he felt better in the quiet too. That. Sometimes his brain ran too fast and didn't know how to stop. That music helped. Most of the time, Sofia didn't ask questions. She just listened, as if she knew that not every feeling had a name. Then, still under the rain, she started to play. A soft, melancholic melody, simple, like a secret being shared. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, letting the music settle inside him. When she stopped, he didn't say anything, just looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, felt understood. As the rain lightened, Sofia stood, slinging the guitar over her shoulder. She turned to him, smiled gently, and said, "I might play again tonight. Same place." Then she walked away, barefoot on the wet pavement. Ethan stayed seated for a while, and as he watched her disappear into the misty street, he realized something had shifted inside him. He didn't feel like a stranger anymore. The days passed in soft repetition. Slow mornings, wandering afternoons, evenings by the ocean. Ethan and Sofia had settled into something quiet and natural. They didn't need to say much. They just existed near each other, and that was enough. They walked side by side through dusty alleys and down toward the beach barefoot, letting the sea reach their toes. She hummed as they walked and he listened. Sometimes they talked about nothing at all, sometimes about everything. Ethan felt it before he understood it. Something had shifted inside him. The noise in his head had softened. He smiled more, even if just a little. He didn't think about leaving. He didn't count the days. Instead, he watched the way Sofia squinted at the sky, how her fingers curled around her guitar strap, how her laughter filled the spaces where silence once lived. And then, one golden evening by the sea, she told him. They were sitting in the sand, watching the sun dip into the water. Her guitar lay next to her, untouched. She looked out over the waves and spoke softly, almost like a confession. She had been offered a chance to audition for a music school in Guadalajara. A professor had seen a video of her singing at a town fair, just a short clip posted online, and had sent an invitation. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was something. A door, a whisper of possibility. She would have to leave in 2 weeks. Ethan went still. He looked at her, but she was still watching the sea, her expression unreadable. She said her mother was against it, said her father didn't believe in dreams that didn't pay the bills. She wasn't sure she'd go. She didn't know if she had the courage or if it was even worth it. Ethan wanted to speak. He wanted to tell her that she was good enough, more than enough, that the way she sang made the world quieter, that she should go, that he believed in her, even if no one else did. But the words didn't come. All he managed was a nod, and something like, "If it's a real chance, maybe you should take it." But inside, he felt something unraveling. The old fears of being left behind, of not mattering enough to be remembered, came rushing back like a wave. That night, sleep didn't come easily, and as the fan spun above him and the air hung thick with heat, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her voice, about her hands on the strings, about the possibility that this, whatever this was, might be ending before it had even begun. Something had shifted. It wasn't sudden, and it wasn't loud, but Sofia could feel it. In the way Ethan spoke less, in the pauses that stretched a little longer, in the way he started showing up late, or not at all. He was pulling away, quietly, slowly, almost like he didn't want her to notice, but she did. She waited for him on the beach one afternoon, the same spot they always sat, the same guitar resting beside her. The sky turned orange, then pink. The sun dipped beneath the waves, and still he didn't come. She left without a word, but something inside her had already started to ache. Ethan wasn't sure why he was doing it, only that he couldn't stop. Every time he thought about Sofia, leaving, his chest tightened. His mind raced, creating stories he couldn't control, stories where he was forgotten, replaced, left behind. He didn't want to lose her, but more than that, he didn't want to be the one holding on when she let go. So he stepped back. Because if he didn't get too close, maybe it wouldn't hurt as much when she left. It was the same old instinct, the same fear he'd carried for years. The one that told him he was too much to handle, or not enough to keep. The next day, he finally went to see her. Sofia was sitting by the steps outside her house, guitar in hand but not playing. She looked up when she saw him. No anger, no tears. Just tired eyes and a soft sigh. He sat beside her, silent. After a while, she spoke. Not with blame, but with truth. She told him she missed him, even when he was right there. That it felt like he was already gone, and that she didn't know if she was strong enough to chase a dream while holding on to someone who kept letting go. Ethan looked down, hands clenched. He wanted to explain, to say that the fear wasn't about her, it was about himself. That he'd never known how to believe in something that felt good or lasting, that every goodbye he'd ever lived had taught him to run first. But all he managed was a nod and silence. She stood, gently placed her guitar over her shoulder and said, "I haven't decided if I'll go, but if I do, I'm not sure you'll be there when I come back." Then she walked inside, and Ethan was left staring at the empty steps. For the first time that summer, he felt completely alone. The days that followed were quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that fills the space between two people with unanswered questions and unsaid things. Ethan kept walking past Sofia's street, hoping to see her, but never daring to knock. Then, one morning, as he passed the small bakery near the square, he heard her name. Two older women were talking, and her name, Sofia, rose like a spark from the wind. They were saying her mother had found out about the audition, about the video, about the boy she'd been spending time with, and she was furious. Apparently she'd forbidden Sofia from leaving, said it was nonsense, that dreams don't feed anyone, that music doesn't save people, that girls like her should stay home, stay quiet, and stop believing in fairy tales. Ethan felt the words hit like a weight on his chest. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the mother's refusal. It was the echo of every voice that had ever told him the same. Don't reach too far. Don't hope too much. Don't dream. That afternoon he went to her house. He didn't expect to see her, and he didn't. Instead, the door opened to a woman with stern eyes and a protective stance. Her gaze cut through him like glass. She asked what he wanted. He said he wanted to talk to Sofia. She said that wasn't going to happen. She told him Sofia needed to focus on real life, not illusions planted by strangers. That summer wasn't a movie, and she wasn't a girl in a song. Ethan tried to explain, to defend her, but the woman shut the door before he finished his sentence. He returned home in silence, heart pounding. His thoughts spiraled again. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe this was just a moment, just a summer, just a mistake, but something inside him, a voice deeper than the fear, whispered, "No, she's not wrong for dreaming. You're just scared." That night, he didn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, playing her voice over and over in his mind. The softness, the strength, the way she made him believe in something, and for the first time, he didn't want to run. He wanted to stay, to fight, to help her fly, even if she flew far from him. The morning felt different. Maybe it was the breeze, or the way the sun came through the window, or maybe it was the silence inside Ethan, not empty, but focused. A quiet he hadn't felt in years. He knew what he had to do. He found his father. In the kitchen, halfway through his first cup of coffee, the man looked up, surprised by the intensity in Ethan's eyes. He waited like he somehow knew a storm was coming. Ethan sat down and spoke. He told him everything, about Sofia, about the audition, about the guitar, the silences, the way she made the world feel lighter, about her mother, the door slammed in his face, and the dream that was hanging by a thread. Carlos, his father, listened, and when Ethan finished, he didn't mock him, didn't shut him down. Instead, after a long pause, he said, "I once had a chance to leave too. I didn't take it. I told myself it wasn't the right time, that it wouldn't work. But really, I was just scared." He looked at Ethan with the kind of honesty that only comes after years of silence. "Don't let her give up because of people like me." And then, to Ethan's surprise, he handed him the car keys. That afternoon, Ethan wrote a letter to Sofia's mother, not to argue, not to beg, just to explain. He wrote about Sofia's talent, about how her voice made people stop and listen, about how hard it was to believe in yourself when the world was always telling you to settle, about how he'd spent most of his life thinking he was too much or not enough, and how Sofia had changed that. He said she didn't need permission to dream, but she did need support, and if her mother wouldn't give that, maybe it was time someone else did. He signed his name, folded the paper, and walked to her house. He didn't ask to come in, just left the letter and walked away. The next day, he sat on the same rock where they used to meet by the beach. For a long time, he waited. Then, just as the sun began to dip, he heard footsteps in the sand. It was Sofia. She was holding a white envelope. She sat beside him without saying anything. Her eyes were glassy but calm. She handed him the envelope. Inside was the official audition invitation. Time, place, recommendation letter, confirmation, and a note from her mother. It didn't say much, just that she could go, but not alone. Ethan looked up. Sofia smiled. Softly, the weight on her shoulders finally starting to lift. They didn't hug, didn't kiss, didn't promise forever, but in that moment, side by side, they both understood. Whatever happened next, they had already changed each other, forever. The road to Guadalajara stretched endlessly ahead of them, golden fields on either side, mountains rising in the distance. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, hands firm on the wheel. Sofia sat quietly beside him, the guitar case resting between her legs. She didn't speak much, and neither did he, but it wasn't silence made of fear or distance. It was a stillness that came from knowing this mattered. Every mile they drove was a step into something bigger, into the unknown, into the real world, beyond the waves and dusty streets of the town where they met. That night, they stayed in a small hostel near the music school. Sofia went over the song once, then closed her eyes and let herself rest. Ethan didn't sleep much. He just watched her breathe, and for the first time in his life, didn't feel the need to escape the moment. The morning of the audition was cool and quiet. Sofia wore a romantic flowing dress with soft fringes that moved when she walked. She tuned her guitar in silence. Her hands trembled a little, but her eyes stayed focused. Ethan walked her to the school entrance and waited in the back of the small theater. Dozens of students, professors, and strangers sat in silence as names were called, then hers, Sofia Alvarez. She stepped onto the stage, barefoot, with her guitar slung over her shoulder like an old friend. The lights were warm and soft. Her face glowed. She didn't look at the crowd, she looked straight at Ethan. Then she played. The same melody they'd built together under the rain, the one she first sang in the soft hush of a summer night. Only, now it filled the room. Raw, beautiful, whole. She sang like someone who wasn't asking for permission anymore. When she finished, there was a silence. And then, a wave of soft applause. Growing, deepening, honest. She stepped off the stage, with tears in her eyes, and walked straight into Ethan's arms. 2 days later, Ethan returned to the village, alone. He stood by the sea at sunset, watching the sky burn orange and gold, the conch she once gave him resting quietly in his palm. She stayed behind to begin a new chapter. But something stayed with him too. A stillness, a courage, a belief that even a short story can change everything, that some summers don't end, they just grow quieter inside you. It wasn't just a summer. It was a turning point, where fear became courage, where music became memory, and where two hearts learned that sometimes even one season is enough to rewrite everything. Enjoyed the story? Help it reach more people. Like the video if this story touched your heart. Share with someone who needs a little hope. Subscribe to the channel to discover more stories like this. Come back soon. Every week we bring you new tales to move, inspire, and stay with you.